SLT Speed Up සවාරිය සමගින් සද්දන්ත වාසි රැල්ලක්. අලුත් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සබඳතා සඳහා පළමු මාස දෙක පුරා data double. Speed up with SLT.
Making headlines on First at 9. Provincial Council resolution. The Northern Provincial Body passes proposal to see Sri Lanka referred to the International Criminal Court. Not all see it as a valid move.
By attempting to arrive at such a resolution, the Northern Provincial Council has violated the provisions of the Constitution itself.
Terrorist links. A Sri Lankan arrested in Australia over suspected links to IS. Equal treatment. Arrest warrants issued for 4 members of the Buddhist clergy. Hunt for Sangha. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa expresses concerns over members of the clergy being targeted. The WTO in crosshairs. The US President threatens to pull out of the World Trade Organization. A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to First at 9 on Derana 24/7 Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chang. Now moving on to our top story tonight, chairmanship of the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation was handed over to President Maithripala Sirisena at Kathmandu summit today. The summit came to a close with the adoption of the Kathmandu Declaration held under the auspices of outgoing BIMSTEC Chairman, Prime Minister of Nepal, KP Sharma Oli.
The 4th Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation Summit, also known as BIMSTEC Summit, kicked off at the capital of Nepal yesterday morning. Addressing the summit, President Maithripala Sirisena spoke on the importance of collectively fighting against the illegal drug trade. Upon conclusion of the event, all 7 state leaders held a cordial meeting this morning where the outgoing chair of BIMSTEC, Prime Minister of Nepal, KP Sharma Oli, and his wife warmly welcomed the esteemed delegates. Another notable event which took place on the final day of the 4th BIMSTEC Summit is the adoption of the much talked about Kathmandu Declaration. A special ceremony was held under the auspices of outgoing chairman and Nepal Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. Representing Sri Lanka, State Minister of Foreign Affairs Vasantha Senanayake penned the MOU for the BIMSTEC grid interconnection along with foreign ministers from Bangladesh, India, Myanmar, Thailand, Bhutan and Nepal. Thereafter, the 4th BIMSTEC summit successfully concluded with Nepal Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli handing over the chairmanship of the grouping to Sri Lankan President Maithripala Sirisena.
I wish to thank all member states for the trust and confidence placed in Sri Lanka. I wish to congratulate Nepal for hosting a very successful 4th BIMSTEC summit and for the warm hospitality afforded to all of us. Sri Lanka looks forward to implementing the ambitious agenda this summit has set for us. I look forward to welcoming all of you to Sri Lanka. Thank you very much.
The next BIMSTEC summit is scheduled to be held in Sri Lanka.
The Northern Provincial Council has passed a proposal put forth by Councillor M.K. Shivajalingam, which includes the Provincial Council calling on the United Nations to refer Sri Lanka to the International Criminal Court or to a specially created international tribunal for the island nation headed by the United Nations. The provincial body says that the government is still unable to or unwilling to implement the UNHRC Resolution 30/1 and 34/1 and the proposed action must be resorted to if Sri Lanka fails to fully implement the UNHRC resolutions before March next year.
Proposal to refer Sri Lanka to the International Criminal Court or to a specially created international tribunal for the island nation headed by the UN to deliberate alleged war crimes which is speculated to have been perpetrated during the conflict with the terror group, the LTTE, was tabled during yesterday's session at the Northern Provincial Council. It was tabled by Council member M.K. Shivajalingam yesterday and was passed unanimously. The provincial body says that the government is still unable to or unwilling to implement the UNHRC Resolution 30/1 and 34/1, and the proposed action must be resorted to if Sri Lanka fails to fully implement the UNHRC resolutions before March next year. The Northern Provincial Council also calls upon the UNHRC to establish a UN Special Rapporteur for Sri Lanka to monitor the plight of the members of the Tamil community who are affected by the war. The resolution passed at the NCP also urged the UN Security Council to import military sanctions on Sri Lanka until substantial progress is made. The Council calls on all countries around the world to deny entry visa to Sri Lankan military personnel implicated in alleged war crimes. The resolution passed at the Northern Provincial Council calls upon the member countries of the UN to help conduct a UN-monitored referendum in the northeast region of the island to determine the political preference of the Tamil people. First at 9 put the serious manifestations at yesterday's session of the Northern Provincial Council to Attorney at Law Krishmal Varnasurya.
Constitutionally, we can't espouse to or we can't permit anything other than an institution recognized by our constitution that exercises the judicial power of the people to judge any Sri Lanka. We are governed by a constitutional supremacy. And in terms of the constitution, the judicial power of the people to institutions recognized by the constitution to exercise judicial power. Our constitution cannot recognize any judicial power that is vested in our judicial institutions to be exercised by others. To foreign courts, foreign tribunals, anything that is foreign that is not recognized by the constitution is out. By making or attempting to arrive at such a resolution, there is also this question that the Northern Provincial Council has violated the provisions of the constitution itself. Now, when any institution created under our constitution, which created provincial councils, seeks to act beyond the constitution itself or take acts that are unconstitutional, then there is a question as to whether they are acting against the oath of office that they have assumed. They have already made an assumption that war crimes have been committed, that human rights have been violated. Had it read, if there had been crimes committed, then that may have been more appropriate. But as to whether you can assume that such crimes have been committed in a resolution adopted by a provincial council set up under our constitution, the wording of this resolution becomes unconstitutional.
Meanwhile, during a media briefing held today, former MP retired Rear Admiral Dr. Sarath Veerasekara said that the government should exploit the situation of America withdrawing from the Human Rights Council and move to nullify the resolution.
If somebody has advised the President that the OISL report does not carry accusation against war heroes of Sri Lanka, it's a grave error. America tabled the resolution 30/1 based on the OISL report. No foreign minister of a country have ever co-sponsored a Geneva resolution against their own country admitting to committing war crimes in their country. Resolution 30/1 was tabled by the US and they have now pulled out of the United Nations Human Rights Council. This is an opportune moment for the government to exploit this situation and get the resolution nullified.
වාසියට අරගෙන අපේ රජයට පුළුවන් ඒ යෝජනාවත් නිෂ්ප්‍රභා කරන්න.
In the meantime, parliamentarian of the UPFA Kanchana Wijesekara believes vesting more power on the Northern Provincial Council will be pointless given the fact that current powers and resources allocated for the provincial body are underused. He had his views speaking to Indivari Amuwatta at Hyde Park yesterday.
Consecutive governments continued to bring in manifestos and promise to the people that constitutional changes would be brought in. Don't you think that is what the people want in that sense, because they voted in?
But if you look at the major promises that were given were probably during the height of the war. So that's when there was a need for a political solution, especially to the North and East conflict, as well as empowering the provincial councils. But since then, you had to really look into the issues and see if there is any need to give more powers to the provincial councils or to take out more powers from the executive presidency. Personally, I feel executive presidency has worked in Sri Lanka very well, and if they are to give powers to the parliament, a powerful prime minister coming in, I really hope the powers within the parliament stay within the parliament rather than being given to the provincial councils. I don't think even the current president wants to do a change on the executive presidency, even though it was promised. But if it does come into parliament, we will probably vote in for a system where the leader of the country gets a little bit more power, whether it's a presidency or it's a prime minister, the parliament. Because if you divide the powers between the president and the prime minister, it will be the same scenario in the last 3 years, where the president takes a decision and where the prime minister overrules it, where the prime minister takes a decision where the president overrules it. So that doesn't benefit the country.
Talking about the provincial council, powers to the provincial council matter, I think they still talk about the north and east, devolving power to the north and east, powers vested within that region of our country. As a young person, a politician, what have you got to say?
You had to look at the other provinces as well, the 8 other provinces. The same powers which are vested within the southern province is also vested within the northern province. But if you look at the workload that is being done in the 2 provinces, there's a big gap between the two. I feel the powers that are given to the province in the northern province is probably not being utilized. If you look at the allocated funds, if you look at the development that has been taking place, the same amount of money that has been given to the Southern Provincial Council was given to the Northern Provincial Council as well as the Eastern Provincial Council. If you look at the end of each year from 2012, the money sent back to the central government from the Northern Province and the Eastern Province is way much more than the other 7 provinces.
Now you can catch a repeat telecast of the program at Hyde Park tomorrow at 7 p.m. right here on Sri Lanka's news channel, Derana 24/7. Now moving on to another local story now. A parliamentarian of the Tamil National Alliance, M.A. Sumandaram, stresses the importance of a new constitution, saying it will address the root cause of the conflict which prevailed in the country for 30 years. Addressing an event in Galle today, the parliamentarian added that a small change in the provincial council system will enable the Tamil community accept living as one nation.
The constitution is a social contract. The war began owing to the Tamil people not being allowed to have their say in it. This is why they wanted a separate state. That is where the problem lies. This is a problem in using state powers. Hence, we say that by creating a constitution, we can resolve the main problem. All problems cannot be resolved through this, but this is the foundation. This is where we show our consent to live as one nation. If we make minor changes in the current provincial council system, our people are ready to accept this and give our consent to live as one nation.
Australia has arrested and charged a Sri Lankan with planning a terror attack after finding symbolic locations within Sydney listed as possible targets in his notebook. New South Wales police official Mick Shea told reporters the 25-year-old was arrested today in Sydney, charged with repairing a terror offence, and is in custody while his home and workplace at a university are searched. A Sri Lankan man employed by a Sydney university has been charged over a document that police allege contained plans for terrorism attacks. The 25-year-old was arrested by counter-terrorism officers at the University of New South Wales in Kensington last evening. It followed a tip-off from a worker at the university who police said found a notebook that allegedly contained the names of several locations and individuals as potential targets.
Well, at this stage, he hasn't been charged with being a member of a terrorist group. From documentation, he would affiliate with ISIS. Look, it's quite a significant document which requires further analysis. At this stage, there is a number of locations and individuals named in that document who are potential targets. It would be inappropriate to detail much about that whilst the matter is still before the courts.
New South Wales Police Detective Acting Superintendent Michael Shee went on to say they have both psychologists and investigators analysing the document to try to interpret the intent and capability, but that is in essence the offence that is before the court. Former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa urges all professionals and intellectuals to support the rally Jana Balaya Kolumbata, which is organised to be conducted on the 5th of September. He made the invitation via communique issued to media today.
Former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa today released a media communique calling on all professionals and intellectuals to support the rally Jana Balaya Kolumbata. He says that it is clear the state apparatus is being abused to unjustly and arbitrarily violate the fundamental democratic right of espousing dissenting political views. He says, quote, "The government is engaged in a rampant violation of fundamental democratic norms in ways that threaten the very foundations of a functioning republic," unquote. The communique further says that the government has pursued a policy of ceding control over key sectors of the economy to foreign interests, despite strong opposition from stakeholders, professionals and the general public. And, quote, it has entered into agreements in the most unprofessional and unethical manner with scant regard for technical concerns, and most alarmingly, many of these agreements do not include clauses for renegotiation or annulment, unquote. According to the communique, there are also dangerous and concerted efforts to compromise peace and reconciliation in the pursuit of personal political interest, and the former Defence Secretary says it is evident in the ongoing constitutional reform initiatives as well as the witch hunt on military personnel who have made untold sacrifices to rid the country of terrorism. The rally, Janabalaya Kolambata, is set to be worked off on the 5th of September. In the meantime, a group of parliamentarians representing the joint opposition met with the chief prelates of the Ramanya and Amarpura sects in Kandy today. The aim of the visit was to inform the chief prelates of the protest Janabalaya Kolambata. In the meantime, addressing a media briefing today, the joint opposition said that some members of the Janata Vimukti Peramuna as well as the United National Party will attend the protest.
The Fourth Magistrate ordered the arrest of 4 members of the Buddhist clergy, including Venerable Bengamuye Nalakathera, and they be produced before court. The 4 members of the clergy stand accused of damaging public property during a protest conducted in 2016, and the case was taken up before Fourth Magistrate Lanka Jayaratne this morning.
Venerable Bengamuye Nalakathera and several others were accused of damaging public property during a protest pertaining to disabled war heroes at Fort on the 7th of November in 2016. The case, which was filed by Fort Police, was taken up before Fort Magistrate this morning. Following deliberation, Fort Magistrate Lanka Jayaratne issued arrest warrants on the accused and were requested they be produced before court during the next hearing. Amongst the defendants are Venerable Bengamuye Nalakathera, Venerable Magal Kande Sudattathera, Venerable Itte Kande Saddatissathera and Venerable Madille Panyalokathera. The magistrate went on to say that if the police fail to carry out the arrests, then measures will be taken to issue special warrants against the accused. Meanwhile, the Court of Appeal today rejected Venerable Galagadatti Gnanasara Thera's application for leave to appeal his sentence. Attorneys representing the Thera filed an application for leave to appeal the 6-year sentence given to the General Secretary of the organisation, Bodubala Sena. The application was taken up for consideration today before a judge bench comprising Court of Appeal President Justice Preeti Padman Surasena and Justice Arjuna Obesekara. Venerable Galagadatti Gnanasara Thera was convicted of 4 charges over contempt of court on the 8th of August and sentenced by the appeal court to 19 years of rigorous imprisonment to be completed within 6 years.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa is critical of the government's conduct, saying that it is targeting members of the Buddhist clergy. Addressing media following a function held in Colombo today, the former president said the reconciliation process adopted by the government also defames Buddhism.
There's nothing in it, although people come. That Akirula was a mega program. This one is nothing like that, and is a small-scale venture. A huge crowd will arrive on the day. The government will of course attempt to stop it, but they won't be able to. A large crowd is awaiting to attend the protests. I don't think that it should happen. The parliament should function. Of course, not only the Sangha, they are hunting even Buddhism. They are insulting Buddhism under the guise of reconciliation.
Today is the last day of the National Exhibition Enterprise Sri Lanka, which is organised by the Ministry of Finance and Mass Media. The general public have the chance to catch the exhibition worked off at the Monoragle District Secretariat premises until this midnight.
Enterprise Sri Lanka 2018 National Exhibition is conducted to publicise the government's ambitious programme Vision 2025 to create a paradise for entrepreneurs. It boasts 515 stalls from both the state and the private sector. The closing ceremony of the National Exhibition got underway at 4 p.m. today under the auspices of Minister of Housing and Construction Sajith Premadasa and the Minister of Agriculture Mahinda Amaravira. It is proposed that the exhibition, which aims to generate 100,000 entrepreneurs within a year, be conducted in all districts, and the second installment of the exhibition is planned to be worked off in the district of Anuradhapura towards the latter stages of the year.
Idris Singh Trust Investments today informed the Commercial High Court in Colombo that it has put forth a list of suggestions with regards to repaying the depositors of the company. In the meantime, the Organisation for the Protection of ETI Depositors made a request to testify on the case, and in response, they have informed to testify when the case is taken up next. Let's now cross over to a short commercial break.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back to the news. 15 representatives from Sri Lanka border regulatory agencies, private sector organizations, Chamber of Commerce and members of the Sri Lanka National Trade Facilitation Committee engaged in a familiarization from the 27th to the 31st of August. According to a media release issued by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the delegation was headed by Chairperson of the National Trade Facilitation Committee, Director General of Customs PMS Charles and Director General of Commerce Co-Chairperson Sonali Wijeratna. During this visit, the Sri Lankan delegation will learn the best practices in trade facilitation in Australia. This program was implemented under the EU-Sri Lanka Trade-Related Assistance Project by the International Trade Centre and UNIDO. Under this project, the ITC, in close collaboration with the Export Council of Australia and the DFAT, organised a tour for a Sri Lankan delegation to build their capacity in the area of trade facilitation. Oil prices fell today amid concerns that the trade war between the United States and China could intensify. Although looming US sanctions against Iran's oil exports prevented markets from falling further. International Brent crude oil futures were at $77.55 per barrel, down 22 cents from their last close. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures were down 6 cents at $70.90 a barrel. Still, with Venezuelan supply falling sharply and concerns around US sanctions against Iran that will target its oil exports from November, crude markets in August are on track to post a more than 4% rise for Brent and a 2% increase for West Texas Intermediate. Despite this, some analysts caution that the trade disputes between the United States and other major economies, especially China and the European Union, could start to drag on economic growth and, by extension, fuel demand. The offshore price index ended 0.06% higher at 6,080.26 today in its fourth gaining session in 15. The day's turnover was at 639 million rupees, less than this year's daily average of 813.3 million rupees. Foreign investors sold a net 99 million rupees worth of shares today, extending the net foreign selling so far this year to 4.2 billion rupees worth of shares. We now have Stefan Dialvis from NDB Securities with a detailed report.
During the week, the ASPI gained 0.5%. Meanwhile, the S&P SL20 increased by 0.5%. However, the ASPI lost 1.1%, whilst the S&P SL20 dropped 3.1% for the month. The average daily turnover for the week was up from last week to 545 million rupees. Furthermore, foreigners remained active for the week, closing as net sellers, where foreign sales accounted for 50% of the total weekly turnover.
The Sri Lankan rupee dropped to an all-time low today, marking its 9th straight session of setting fresh lows as dollar demand from importers remains strong. Now, the rupee, which hit a fresh record low of 161 rupees and 55 cents early in the trade, closed steady at 161 rupees and 40 to 50 per dollar. With that, let's now take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies around the world. US President Donald Trump is threatening to pull the country out of the World Trade Organization, saying he will do so if the International Trading Group doesn't shape up. In an interview with Bloomberg, Trump criticized the WTO's treatment of the United States.
President Donald Trump threatened to withdraw the US from the World Trade Organization, claiming it treats the country unfairly. In an interview with Bloomberg News, Trump said if the WTO doesn't shape up, he would withdraw the US from the WTO. The WTO was established to provide rules for global trade and resolve disputes between countries. Trump says the body too often rules against the US, although he concedes it has won some recent judgments.
We will join you with some sports news after this commercial break.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
Sri Lanka's only remaining medal hope, the men's 7A side rugby team today secured a spot in the semi-finals, which will be held tomorrow against Japan. Sri Lanka defeated Afghanistan 36-0 in the preliminary round this morning to advance into the quarter-final. Late in the day, they beat China 17-12 in the all-important quarter-final to secure a berth in the semi-finals against mighty Japan tomorrow. Meanwhile, the Sri Lanka men's 4x400 meter relay finish has got people talking despite the quartet coming in the fourth place. They came very close to breaking the national record for the event, falling 0.3 seconds short. There was controversy at Flushing Meadows yesterday with the umpire officiating the match involving Nick Kyrgios being accused of giving the player a pep talk. There was also shock in the women's draw with second seed Caroline Wozniacki being dumped out of the US Open.
Nick Kyrgios, who rarely listens to anyone, appeared to take some advice to try harder from chair umpire Mohammad Laihani as he rallied to beat Frenchman Pierre Hugues Herbert and reached the US Open third round in New York yesterday. Although Kyrgios dropped his opening set, his level of play and interest rose dramatically after the pep talk and he swept the next three sets for a 4-6, 7-6, 6-3, 6-0 win. Second seed Roger Federer defeated a frustrated Benoit pair 7-5, 6-4, 6-4 at the US Open yesterday to set up a third round match against Nick Kyrgios as the Swiss continues his quest for a record sixth title at Flushing Meadows. In the meantime, Novak Djokovic overcame a third set blip to overcome America tennis Sandgren 6-1, 6-3, 6-7, 6-2 to secure a berth in the round of 32. In the women's draw, Lesia Tsurenko dumped second seed Caroline Wozniacki out of the US Open with a 6-4, 6-2 win. There was no such worries for Maria Sharapova as she brushed aside Sorana Cîrstea 6-2, 7-5.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Derana 24/7.
Sheila Fernandez at the Derana Weather Centre with your forecast first evening edition.
A very good evening to our viewers and welcome to Forecast First. Starting off with your temperatures for tomorrow that will vary between 20 and 35 degrees Celsius with the eastern province bearing the brunt of it as the highest of 35 degrees Celsius expected in Batticaloa. Well, when looking at the map, a low pressure zone will develop in the western province and will gradually disappear. Well, most parts of the upper region of the island including Vaunia, Putlam, Trincomalee and Batticaloa will experience showers with thunder activity also expected. It's no difference in the lower region as most parts except for Kandy will experience thunder showers. That's all we have from the Weather Centre tonight. Up next is your city by city forecast.
Before we leave you tonight, since it's Friday, we bring you the good story for the week. Immigration attorney Pamela Peñado Stewart works tirelessly defending the rights and the dignity of thousands of immigrants in Georgia. By most accounts, living in Georgia as an undocumented immigrant is exceptionally difficult since the state is notorious for having some of the rigid immigration laws in the country. Immigration attorney Pamela, who witnessed firsthand the struggles families undergo when their loved ones are detained and deported, inspired her to attend law school. At 29, she becomes the youngest and only female partner in the history of her firm. And with that, we conclude this edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant evening.